and thank you for joining us for the was it May 2nd live stream.
It, indeed.
Uh, yeah.
One day after May Day, I hope you all got your fertility festival needs met yesterday. Dancing
Mm,
around maypoles and all that.
yeah. We're doing another Monday just because that seems to be what's working out at the moment. Hopefully that works for everybody else. If not, you can watch it or not at some other time.
Indeed. So, yes, we have a title on this one. The Elongated Muskrats and Cloud Aspirations.
Mm-hmm.
We clearly want to talk about stretched rodents and their desire to fly.
Or aspirate clouds.
Ah, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I see what you did there. It was pretty good.
Yeah. So this is something that we had talked about doing a short segment on, just a rando during the week live stream, and due to technical issues, never actually did it. So
I
we
do
are
love when
planning.
sorry, I do love when the two of us claim technical issues. You know, we're really excellent operations people. Honest.
Well, see, if I wouldn't have told them, they wouldn't have known. But you know what?
Here,
Sometimes
here.
shit happens.
Anyway, you were saying.
Yeah. So we are planning to do some other short segments just to kind of kick a couple things out during the week. Something much
Yep.
shorter than our 2 hour live stream marathon. Uh I guess 2 hours isn't really a marathon, but it is a
Right.
bit much. So I know we've promised that several times and it hasn't happened yet, but
We are
maybe this
working on
time
it. We
we
are
are
working on
working on it.
it.
But one of
So
the things
yeah.
I'm trying to do is do that during Chris's drive time. Now that he's got a reasonably long commute,
Yep.
might as well multitask. So
But it resisted us today.
it did. It did.
Ah, well,
Uh, the hazards
not to
of
be
trying to use things you've never used in ways you've never used them.
correct. Um. So on to our first topic at hand. Um. As we all know, Elon Musk, for barring something crazy, is gonna own Twitter. Um.
Yep.
And that got me to thinking, what else might Elon want to get into? So I floated the idea to Brian. Like, you think Elon's going to get into the cloud?
And that's something I had already started thinking about myself. So, in fact, it might have even been that same day you had mentioned it.
Yep.
Just it doesn't necessarily make sense to me in a generalized sense. He's not going to try and take on Amazon.
Um. Initially, no. Um. I think he has. I think he has a especially dismissive place in his heart for Bezos and what he's created. Um. But, uh, I think he often has a lot of dismissive comments and repartee with other tech uh, kings of tech industry. Um,
Yes, tech
I think
billionaires.
I think much of that, honestly, is Elon Musk very effectively playing to the public persona that he's created. Um, I don't think that he goes home at night and wonders, how he can stick it to Jeff Bezos next, right? Like, doesn't strike me as that kind of guy. I think he is a pretty well calculated social media person, persona. Um, but um, he's also a savvy business guy, and I think, like, while I don't like you, I don't think he's going to try to take on an Amazon or a Google. Um, I think that there might be a place in his thought process for like a substantive cloud presence. Maybe to the point where he's like, you know what, I'm not going to take on Amazon today, but 10, 15 years down the road, Sure.
Well, and there's definitely paths to that that totally make sense. Once he eventually owns Twitter,
Right.
well, they have a hell of a large footprint in AWS. Well,
Yep.
that would be a very easy thing. Well, I shouldn't say it would be an easy thing. It would be an easy target or an obvious target, a target of opportunity
And
where,
like,
and based on how segmented Twitter actually is on the back end, like
hmm
microservice wise and just basically everything, I would think it would be not that terribly difficult to move it in chunks.
no, and pretty quick too. The other thing that I think is worth remembering is it's not like he's new to the internet. Like
No. Yeah.
like PayPal, right? Um, and it's not like he moving into new tech spaces is foreign to him. Like you look at his business history, and guy's kind of all over the place.
There he
Um,
is.
Sometimes successful, sometimes not. Um, like we all think of him as like, oh, he's the SpaceX and Tesla guy, but you know, he's
Boring company.
Boring Company and PayPal and uh,
Yep.
machine brain interface and like,
Yeah, Neuralink.
yeah, um, like he's done a lot of varied things. So the idea of him getting into cloud and trying to innovate there isn't surprising at all to me. I think
Yeah.
I think it'd be interesting to see. You floated an interesting concept. We were talking about this earlier. I'll let you I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah. So when you happen to have SpaceX at your disposal, things that totally don't make sense start to almost make sense. Maybe not now, but in the not too distant future. And it's something that he can basically pull off just as a maybe not marketing stunt. I mean, he's not sending a Tesla Roadster to Mars, but he could very conceivably launch small, admittedly small data centers, satellites, and either put them up in geosynchronous or just put them at a higher shell than where Starlink happens to live and use Starlink for connectivity. And there's also thing I mean, he's trying very hard to get to Mars, but there are obvious stepping stones to that, like the moon. Who's going to
Sure.
be the first person to put a data center on the moon? Do you think it won't be Elon?
I mean,
He'll definitely be the first person to put one on Mars. That I have no
yeah,
doubt
yeah.
about.
Like if for no other reason than to say he did it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um.
Well, and they're going to need one. There's too much latency coming all the way back.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They're
I
going to
mean,
need their own infrastructure there.
they're gonna need big compute.
Yeah.
And this is one of the challenges of Mars trips. Like you have to take some of that with you. Like
Oh
you
yeah.
think, oh yeah, we could make a spaceship for humans, and like for pretty low weight. But then when you start to add in
It's all
like,
our junk.
okay, yeah,
We
you're gonna
travel
want
heavy.
right, you're gonna want heavy compute, and you can't wait 28 minutes for an answer from your big silicon brain
No.
for like, hey, what do I do about that asteroid that's hurtling towards
Mm.
me?
Well, and another thing, one of the things that kind of led me towards throwing a data center on a satellite is quantum computing.
Hmm.
Because the biggest challenge to that, well, I shouldn't say the biggest challenge. One of the large challenges to that is keeping it at near absolute zero. That
Sure,
gets a whole lot easier when you're in space.
it sure does.
And
Um,
that's something where you're not expecting real time results. That's send a workload up, check
well,
for an answer.
you talk about small data centers up there. If you if you're in space, um, it's hard to launch microsatellites and get them to sit like feet away from each other. But launching small sats and having them, you know, if they're not too massive and you're not uh, too inaccurate with your speeds, you can get them within tens or maybe hundreds of meters. And at that point, like, you're in space. You can do laser links.
Well, yeah.
You can like you can make your compute nodes just hang out in a loosely clustered cloud, and it's basically the same as having them on copper,
Well,
right?
and you've seen the shipping container data centers.
Hmm.
A little bit smaller, make everything modular, and basically assemble it up in space, like the ISS. You
Right.
can launch that all one time. I mean, took them like a decade to get all that stuff up there.
You don't even have, and this is what I'm saying is you don't have to assemble it. You
Well,
just gotta you
that
gotta get it
too.
close, right?
Make a bunch of just completely autonomous or independent
Yeah.
micro data centers.
Like if you get them in geosync, um, and they just kind of all float around and find each other with lasers, they
Yeah,
can communicate really effectively without ever touching.
yeah.
Um, they all have to have their own power, yes, but
And actually, you could make them a whole lot dumber and have a lot less communications on board, and have them just talk to the Starlink
yeah,
constellation, and not have to talk to each other. But
right.
I mean, yeah, if you can get them close enough to each other, you can, especially in a vacuum. I mean, you can do high speed microwave communication, line of sight, real damn fast.
I mean, you start to get into good usage of electromagnetic wavelengths, like a cluster of the same things you do in fiber optics, right? Like
Yeah,
we pound a ton of data over fiber optics,
yeah,
and we do it because fiber optics contain light really well.
yeah.
You know what? With no atmosphere, you can contain light really well with a
Well,
laser,
yeah,
and you can pound a lot of data through it. So, like, what do you
yeah.
need? You need an optical receptor and a laser to send it. That's
Like
it.
dense wave division multiplexing over free air.
Right.
I mean, why not?
So, like, there's some interesting concepts because, like, to your point, heat dissipation becomes easy. Like,
Yes,
I don't care what compute
much
I throw. Yeah.
easier. Yeah,
You can throw a lot of compute up there, and some of it doesn't work awesome at like nearly zero temperatures, but it's a heat management problem at that point, not a heat dissipation problem.
yeah,
Um, at some point, you're like, well, we're going to burn clock cycles just to keep warm.
yeah,
And, was it thorium?
yeah.
Trying, is that the
Good for making
satellite?
reactors out of.
What's the radioactive um, element that they like to put in long-term satellites and exploration vehicles?
It may well be thorium. I know you can make very small thorium reactors.
Yeah, like essentially you're just sucking energy off of decaying particles, right? So um, we don't make a ton of them anymore, but why not? Not going to hurt
Yeah,
anybody.
yeah. Or
I mean,
even solar.
yeah, you can get a lot of energy out of solar now.
You can, especially when you don't. It doesn't have to go through the atmosphere first.
Hmm. And if you keep it close enough, you can go up and maintain stuff. Or, like, if it breaks, you just kick it off and send it to the sun. Let the sun
Well,
recycle it.
well, and that's the thing. Maintain it. No, you just eject it.
Yeah,
I mean, hell, now they don't even bother replacing hard drives. You get to
true.
something that like uh, Facebook scale. I mean, do they even bother replacing whole racks of servers anymore?
I'm pretty sure they
No,
wait
you
for
just build a new room.
right.
You wheel in a new rack.
You will in a new uh, container at this
Well,
point.
yeah.
It's like semi rolls up and like pallets. You know, you pull a half a trailer off, right? Like
Yep.
3 forklift loads and a couple of interconnects. I mean, I'm assuming that's how they do it because economies of scale make sense. Um, we could be surprised. There could be a bunch of like really intense, poorly paid data center techs that are still like connecting stuff in their free time. They never
Yeah.
leave. They just throw them steaks.
Use the heat of the servers to cook their food.
Right. I run a sous vide on the old hardware. It's fine.
Hey, well, I mean, at least you're using it for something.
Uh,
Hmm.
that reminds me, I just finished the audiobook version of a book called The Warehouse.
Hmm.
Dystopian, like Google, Apple, Amazon inspired type of thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, the idea of like the company will take you for everything they can, um, whoever that is. Interesting read or listen, as the case may be. So,
Rob Hart.
yep. Um, good stuff. I mean, I'm not going to say it's going to, like, it should have won any Pulitzer Prizes or anything like that, but interesting concept. Worth, I think it's like 10 hours of audiobook. So,
Okay.
if
Oh,
you
is
got,
that your drive time
that was my drive
time
time.
killer?
And I'm going to have to pick something else up. The real challenge is like, I'd like to do technical stuff, right? Like, pick up something on FinOps or SecOps or something like that, but not a lot of people reading those
No,
onto
I feel like it would
audiobook
be too
format.
dense to actually consume that way.
Yeah. Yeah, probably.
I mean, maybe if somebody took the material and did it like lecture format
Sure.
without a blackboard. I
Well, that
I don't
implies
know.
that you don't look at your screen while you're driving,
Well, that's what heads-up
which is
displays are for.
right.
Sorry, officer, I was looking at the whiteboard.
Do you know how fast you were going? Uh, I was going about the same speed as the PowerShell script that was being
Yeah,
written in front of me. I don't know.
I don't know.
Um, yeah. Let's see. Speaking of PowerShell, uh, I wanted to. I wish we had more viewers, more commenters. We seem
Yeah.
thin. Maybe this Monday night thing wasn't such a good idea.
Well, there's 4 people watching. I mean,
Are they? Oh, they're just silent and dead. Don't die
yeah.
on us, folks. Um, no, I was gonna say, what's your favorite automation solution, automation platform, whatever you want to talk about. Um, I've actually become a fan of Azure DevOps as an automation platform. Um,
Yeah.
Mostly because they're giving it away. Like, yeah, you pay a little bit for agents in DevOps in Azure DevOps, but like you can run Linux agents. They'll do anything you tell them to,
Yeah.
and they spin them up when you need them. It's not always on. Like, you probably don't want to use it for um, really mission critical automation, but um, for
Standard house cleaning, it may be enough.
yes, standard house cleaning, even like data gathering, it's pretty good. Like, you got to be careful about the sizes of your jobs and that kind of thing, but they're oddly open. There's stuff that you can't get away with in uh, a fair amount of compute in Azure that you can get away with, um, in ADO. Um, uh,
USNC.
U.S. North Central.
Oh,
Yes, the what I term the the not an Azure data center. Um, if you've worked with Azure at all, you very quickly find out that um, all features come last to US North Central. Like
Okay.
literally. Um, there's stuff that you can do in every other Azure data center, but not US North Central.
Iowa?
No, I think they're in Illinois.
Okay.
As my theory is that US North Central is a data center that was built for some government agency, and the only things they offer there are what that government agency in that location is asking for. So, and to support that theory, I'm actually pretty specific. I think that that data center exists to support Great Lakes Naval, because they do use compute there. The government is kind of like does do a fair amount of business with Azure, and I think that so in my mind, if they don't want it or need it at Great Lakes, Azure's not putting it in U.S. North Central, because why would they? In their minds, that I think that data center exists just to service that load, and if they make some money off it, besides that, fine.
601 Northwest Avenue, North Lake, Illinois.
North Lake, huh?
Hmm?
I'm gonna have to find it. It's internet search time for Chris.
Okay. I know right where that is. To work for a place that had a warehouse in Melrose Park, which is right next door.
Okay, yeah.
One
Yep.
of those western suburbs of Chicago where like every 6 blocks is a different suburb.
Yep. Yeah, at the joint of 294 and 290. Like,
Yep.
it's exactly where you'd want a data center. Super close to O'Hare, which means you've got really great access to like primary load internet. When is that going to go away? When is connectivity going to stop being based on DARPANET?
I don't know.
Like, why is Madison still important? It's completely, like, geographically, it is unimportant to the rest of the U.S. But
It is. And it's conveniently unimportant because it's in a bad spot.
right.
It's not on the way to anything.
But connectivity-wise, it is like first, second tier.
No, they were one of the big research
They
universities.
were. Like, honestly, before Chicago. But, you can't. I guess what's interesting to me is internet connectivity very much has followed patterns that were established in the rail era.
Well, and there's a reason for that too. It's all about right away. It was a lot
Right.
easier to get right away from rail than it was any other source, because then you're dealing with maybe not one person or one organization coast to coast, but a small handful versus every farmer trying to get a right away through their field.
I mean, today you're dealing with like 2 companies.
Yes. But 20 years ago, it was 5 or 4.
Right.
So,
Don't get me started on the rail industry.
yeah.
I'm a fan of rail. I think it's efficient transport. But
Absolutely is.
the rail
Poorly
industry,
utilized.
yeah, and poorly regulated, honestly. Unless we're talking about Amtrak, which is poorly regulated, but different definition of that term. Amtrak over regulated. Other rail travel, I mean, I don't want to use the word under regulated because I don't like that. But
It would also
There's things.
be inaccurate for anything you could possibly conceive of in the United States or anywhere in the world these days.
There's things that the rail industry gets away with that like no one else could. Like, oh, park a train across a road, block ambulance access, zero repercussion. Police officer goes and knocks politely on the door of the locomotive, if you're lucky.
Sorry, eating lunch. I'll be done in another hour, then I'll get moving.
Right. If at all. If at all. But if we get on this topic, I'm going to get salty and angry. So let's move on. And it doesn't really have anything to do with IT ops. So,
well, one quick related story. Boy, that was 20 years ago. There was a sports bar in not Delafield. Well, anyways, it was right on the railroad tracks, and trains would stop. They'd hop out, they'd go get lunch, and then hop back in the train and keep going. Blocking God knows how many intersections.
If you could get away with it, wouldn't you? Like,
maybe, but I'd feel bad.
And that's why you're not a locomotive operator.
Okay.
Although, I will not say that locomotive operators are all engineers are decent people on the whole. I think like most professions, and their work is different and super specialized. If you want to have a great old time, watch the movie Unstoppable, Chris Pine and Denzel Washington.
Is that the train that has a collision and they can't stop it?
It's a runaway, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Oh, we've got things here. Let's see some comments here, Brian.
Yeah. Yeah. Biotech and healthcare. Yeah. Big time.
Yeah. No, well, it is still the case that maybe the top school in the US, certainly top 2 or 3 for genetics and biotech is Madison. And unlikely to be unseated from that position anytime soon.
Things like that tend to have momentum.
MIT's been trying to catch them for years. Maybe has. I don't know. So, PowerShell. I think a lot of people look at PowerShell and go, oh, whatever. But it's not super fast. Certainly not efficient. But it is reliable. The fact that they've done a lot of the work to interact with APIs and things of that nature in a predictable way, using a language that a large number of IT professionals know at least a little bit of. The fact that they've leveraged a lot of scripting, if you can script like bash, command line, whatever, you can get started in PowerShell pretty easy. And there's stuff that PowerShell does really well. The fact that you can run it on Linux now, PowerShell Core is a real and well-maintained distribution of PowerShell. It's a strong contender for automation. So, yeah.
My biggest complaint was always the documentation. That may well have changed since I really touched it 4 or 5 years ago, but the documentation used to be just awful. Documentation for almost every command was just the command and a list of its arguments with no descriptions whatsoever. It didn't even really tell you what the arguments were looking for or what the formatting on them should be.
And some of that is still the same, but what they've done really well in recent years is they've they've provided example commands, and a little bit of
And you figure
explanation
it out
about
from there, and you
right.
Google it. You get most of your. It's almost like Linux. You're getting most of your support from the community, and
Mhm.
there's some very intelligent people that have written some amazing things.
Right.
So you look at what they got, and you rip it apart, and you
Right.
steal what you need, and you ditch
Like,
the rest.
if you're writing your own complex script, bash, PowerShell, command line, whatever, like, you're doing it wrong. Like, yeah, you're gonna have to invent your wheel sometimes, but for the most part, somebody's already done that. And there's a reason the adage, "Don't reinvent the wheel," exists.
Yeah.
So,
Well, once you get what you want to do down into like blocks of things that need to get accomplished,
right,
each of those blocks of things, I need to do this manipulation to this data. Somebody has done something very similar and has
right,
probably written something about it somewhere.
right. And, like, at this point,
And if you
I've written a bunch of PowerShell, right? Like, from scratch of various ilk. Um, do I remember how to do any of them? Vaguely, but not in any substantive way, because why would I? I have this infinite reference. And, like, I
yeah,
just need a reminder of, like, oh, that's how that command is structured. That's right. Great. I mean, that's the beauty of it.
yeah,
Huge community.
it
So
is.
yeah, I like PowerShell. I will say that Azure, one of the cooler things in Azure right now is Azure Functions allow you to do PowerShell as the coding language that runs in the Azure function. So you can write a PowerShell script and shove it into an Azure function and either, make it a webhook or a timer trigger or what have you. And it's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Familiar
sweet.
process from Excel input.
Yep. I mean, that PowerShell, because Microsoft native, has a fair amount of tools that work pretty well with things like Excel, and Word. And if it'll work well with those, it actually will work pretty well with Sheets, right?
Yeah.
Although the
Is way better than Excel would be just a Google form.
yep,
And that would even be easier to feed into a script.
I mean, at the end of the day, Forms is back-ended by Sheets, right?
Yeah.
And the Sheets API can be a little obnoxious to interact with, but there's PowerShell for that.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, what else we got here?
William, I
Yeah.
love your typing, man, but you keep doing this, we're just gonna have to have you on so you can tell us the stories. Uh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, PowerShell's strong. I I've seen some good things, like, as a platform. I was impressed with some of the stuff that PDQ could do. Um, and for something that is, uh, like, at the start free, obviously you can pay for support and whatnot, which I think any of the kind of open source freemium offerings provide now. Um, but it seems to be a pretty good platform.
Yeah. William, real quick. Always keep a copy of everything.
And
I made that mistake at a former employer
hmm
because I had been there for almost 12 years and didn't think I'd ever be moving on.
so what I'm going to say something that maybe people find, I don't know if they'll find it controversial, but if you've watched any of this, you will know that I think that, like, data exfiltration is a real risk to companies, and I'm not a fan of it. Like, salespeople taking customer lists is a no-no, and they should be slapped in the face for it, or at least on the hand. But if you did work for a former employer doing scripting, yes, technically the company owns that work,
Yes.
but it is also your portfolio, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and that's your cookbook going forward.
right.
Because you can look back and steal fragments of that code, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. Once
Um,
you've solved a problem adequately, why do it more than once?
I actually, this is one of the rare situations where I would not feel any even ounce of concern or hesitation in asking a coworker at a former employer to send me a copy of a script. Like, obviously strip out bad values, right?
And if you have any of that stuff in your script, you probably were doing something wrong anyways. If there's anything proprietary, I mean, what could possibly be in there?
I mean, I sometimes hey, I'm a realist. We've all stuffed a password in a script, right?
Yeah.
Inappropriately.
Well, it's so I'm used to doing everything. It's all Bash, it's all shell scripts in Linux. There's almost never a reason to do that. Almost.
And there's your sales pitch for Linux, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to do that in Linux. Um, in the Windows world, sometimes you do. And Michael, like, I think you should tell people, like, get employers used to the idea that, like, yeah, I did this work for you.
Yeah.
It's yours, but it's also mine.
Yeah. Guess what? I won't try and sell it. I won't distribute it. It's for me.
You know what? If I take this and I turn it into something saleable, I won't charge you for it.
You'll get a free license. Yep.
Right. Like, I'm never going to come after you for the work that I like, because I have a patent in my name. I am the listed inventor on a patent. But do you know who owns that patent? Honeywell. Do I care? No. I did the work while I was working for them. They own that intellectual property. Does that sometimes rub me the wrong way? Sure. But am I ever going to debate that? No. It's how the US patent system works. It's how the intellectual property system works.
Well, yeah,
Um,
it's how work for hire works.
right. But when it comes to things like scripting um, and code, like those snippets of code, yes, they're the company's, but they're also yours. Like, that's shared ownership. You you should have access to it. That's where I come down to on this. And telling an employee that they, even a former employee, that they can't have access to that stuff, for as long as it's little labor to provide them access to it. Um, I think that's just, it's bogus. I think
Well,
you
I may have developed it on your time, but I typed it out twice. One of them on my time. I mean,
exactly.
what's the difference?
I I I agree with Michael. They can give you a hard time
Yeah,
about that
I know.
stuff.
I know.
And at the same time, like, you can go into, like, you could go into court and get into all kinds of weird stuff, and they'll tell you, well, you make sure you delete all of it, and you totally do. Like, yeah, I deleted all of the proprietary information from my hard drive, which means, like, you deleted any usernames and passwords and system names, because the rest of that is not proprietary. The existence of scripting is not proprietary. The assemblage of scripting is not proprietary. Like, unless you're writing your very own self-contained automation framework, that's not proprietary. So, um, so yeah, what else? Michael, what do you like for automation? Are you bash Linux guy? You like to write it in Perl? You know, Fortran, Fivetran,
Uh,
his own
Yeah,
very custom.
I don't know how much automation Mike has really had a hand in.
What's your favorite, Brian? What do you like to use?
I I've always just written shell scripts to do what I need to do, and I
Okay.
know there's easier ways, and I need to work on that.
I mean,
But
don't get me wrong. Like, there's times where I'm like, wow, I really wish I were working in Linux right now because this would be easier.
yes,
And I'm not a great Linux guy, but like, there's stuff. It's like,
there's things that are so easy that are difficult in PowerShell, and vice versa.
right. It's actually one of the things that I like about PowerShell cores. Like, okay, couple bash script with PowerShell, and
Yeah,
now
you can
you've
do
got,
pretty much anything.
yeah, that, to quote the kids, that's tight.
Yeah,
Sun certs. Hmm.
yeah. I actually just gave away my Sun Enterprise 3500 to a former coworker of ours, and also my
Yeah.
SGI.
Yeah.
So
Now
yeah,
that's
he's putzing around with it. I think he's got him. He's at least got the SGI up and running.
okay.
So.
That was some really great hardware.
Oh yeah, I loved it. It looked great. It was
It ra-
sturdy.
it ran great. Um, I so fun story. I have a friend who is now a lead scientist at Fermilabs. But this story comes from way back when he was still uh, a doctoral candidate doing his thesis work at Fermilabs, and he was giving me a tour around the place. Um, and one of the places we walked into was a room that was filled with computers working on collision modeling of particle collisions. And it was the only time in my life that I had ever seen two banks. One was like 120 silicon graphics uh, units, and the other one was 200. Just strapped together, doing distributed compute, modeling single collisions, and they spit out like a collision model every, I think it was like every like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, but like you think about that level of compute for that era, it was a lot of hardware in
Oh
one
yeah.
room,
Oh yeah.
and
Oh, and the stuff was
like
so expensive.
uh-huh. Well, and for a systems guy, like I was like
Yeah,
and
and like I mean, well, and also the Sun stuff. I mean that Sun that I gave him, that was easily $1.5 million box when it was new, and the SGI, it was a workstation. It was probably a $35,000
yep.
workstation, and that was just normal.
Yeah,
That's
that's
what you
what you
wanted to
paid
do.
for.
That's what you need to do. Trying to remember.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I'm waxing
different world.
nostalgic. Different world. Can you imagine paying that much money for any piece of what is ultimately high-end commodity computing today?
No, that's I
Like
mean
if you
30
convert that
grand. That would.
to today's dollars, like
Oh yeah, I mean I wasn't thinking about that. Yeah, late '90s till now. Well, early mid.
like that's like a 120, maybe 200 grand.
Yeah.
And I've absolutely seen bills for that amount for hardware. But like you're talking about like large, really capable clusters, right? Like
Yeah,
blades.
I'm not sure if you could even build a workstation that expensive
No.
these days. Not without just being stupid.
I mean, I tried to, at my last employer, we were looking at hardware, and I was sick of some slowness that I was having on the laptop that I'd been given. So I priced out a laptop that was not going to give me trouble. And I managed to get it to like 15 grand.
Okay.
But that was everything.
Yeah.
Everything. Like top of the line, i9, multiple solid state drives. Like you name it, it was stuffed in there.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, like the PC right next to me. i9 11900K, 128 gigs of RAM, RTX 3090, uh, a 2T and a 1T PCIe 4 SSDs. I mean, there's not a whole lot more you could realistically put in it. Dual 10 gig NICs. Or do I have the quad in there? I can't remember. But still, I mean, it's maybe $3,000.
yep. Yep. Far cry from 30K or, 100K for a single workstation.
I mean, you could do something. I mean, for top of the line Xeon Platinums,
Okay.
2T of memory, an obscene amount of SSD,
Yeah, I
you're still looking
I I still don't think you're getting over
20, 30
50K.
grand.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. You couldn't spend 150, 200 grand. There,
Right.
not without just like,
For a single piece of compute with
yeah,
disk installed, you can't get that high. Like even if you're talking like in the
yeah,
server world where you're buying like just a completely stuffed piece of hyperconverged, right?
yeah.
You're just not getting there.
Gigs of memory. That's a lot for back then. Ultra 10.
I like the price tag. Like that's a nostalgia price tag, right?
Yeah. Because yeah, I had that Ultra Enterprise. Can't remember if it was a 3000 or a 3500. They just say 3000 on the front, but I think it was a 3500. But yeah, it was maxed out with memory, all fiber channel. I
Nice.
mean, it was pimped out for the day, but now, I mean, it's not worth the power to run it.
It's like old school mainframe, right? Like
Yeah.
they're amazing. Now they're not. Hey, speaking of which, if anybody knows a mainframe guy that's looking to make a move, I know a company that'll hire him.
Uh, like what? AS400? Or
Yeah.
what you got? Okay.
Yeah, AS400.
There's still some of them floating around.
There are. I mean,
Paperweight. Yeah. Honestly, there's very few things that has a competitive advantage for anymore.
but
Once
yeah,
again, it's just momentum. It's custom stuff that was written 40, 50, well, probably not 50 years ago, but 30, 40 years ago, and it still works. So they just keep buying hardware that'll keep it running.
I mean, you think about the dawn of the personal computer. It's 1980, right? That's getting real close to 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, then again, the dawn of like digital computing is realistically only about 70 years ago. So,
Yeah. My
and when
snoring dog isn't coming through on the microphone, is it?
nope, nope,
Okay. He's passed out.
good for him. So yeah, what else do we have on the topic list?
Trying to think. I know we mentioned some stuff, and now I
We
can't
did.
remember. Hold on.
Oh, we had security flaw that Microsoft in Linux that
Yes, the
Microsoft wanted
Linux
to make a
flaw
lot of
that
noise about. Yeah.
yes. I think partially they're getting more. They're using Linux themselves more and more, but then it's also, hey, look, they have problems too. Stop looking at us.
You know what's fun is Apple never publishes its exploits, right? But it's running Linux. Well, it's
Well,
Debian, whatever,
BSD, yeah.
or BSD. Um, they've got exploits too. They just don't tell
Yes,
you about them.
they absolutely do. And some stuff that they don't find gets published, but yeah, they are pretty tight-lipped.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, they're the like I'm not a fan of Apple as a company. I think they treat their consumers poorly. Um, and I think that the idea that somehow the experience
Hmm.
is better with an Apple product is just a fallacy. Like I've heard people say, "Well, my Mac boots up so quick." I'm like, "Have you booted a modern Windows computer? Cuz it comes up real quick too." Like I started my i7 from scratch today and I pushed the power button and I've got Windows in like 5 seconds. It's like I've seen Macs, maybe it's 4 seconds. Fine. It's faster for about 4 times the money.
Yeah, well, at least. Well, they make pretty hardware.
They do make pretty hardware. And that's great. Like more power to them. It's
I don't know.
still
Every time I've tried to use OS X, it's been painful. Stuff. I don't know. Maybe my Windows and Linux brains have somehow coalesced into something that is incompatible with their worldview, but nothing works the way it seems like it should.
I you know where the worst part is? It's dealing with them for networking.
Yeah.
Like, well, yeah, we can play on a modern IP network, but we still want to do Apple networking.
Yeah, we're just going to do our own thing anyways, so why
Right.
bother?
Oh, what's that you say? You've got a Wi-Fi network, but is it an Apple Wi-Fi network?
If not, there's a 50-50 chance you might do a firmware update and we're just not going to work anymore.
I just, yeah, not a fan. I I will totally say that um, I am a fan of it as uh, like an iOS device for my mother. Great. She didn't know Android. Like she went from flip phone to her first smartphone was an iOS device. It's fine. Easy peasy. But her support experience is awful.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. If like you can't my mother's a patient, reasonable person. And if her support experience in the Apple store is bad, it means they're bad at support.
Yeah.
Like she's not overly demanding. She just wants answers.
Yeah.
She's willing to make an appointment, but like she's not a hipster. She doesn't speak
Yeah.
hipster lingo. And that's as best I can tell, if you don't adapt to the hipster mindset, the Apple file mindset, your experience there is going to be pretty poor.
Well, and if the answer just buy a new one offends you in some way, they're not the company for you.
Right.
Like,
Well,
oh yeah, we glue all our parts in. Any of their
right.
laptops or they're all in ones, or they're basically unserviceable.
Well, why would you ever need to service something? Our Apple products are designed never to fail you.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm having a problem. Don't worry, our Apple products are designed never to fail you.
But you
But
don't
I've got a
understand. I'm
failure.
having a problem.
But don't worry, our
Don't
Apple
worry.
products are designed to never fail you. Like they are the
Yes.
kings. 1984 doublespeak, right? Like I'm pretty sure that they just tore that page out and they're like, we can do better than this.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, no, like they make good hardware. Their iOS devices are actually they're good. Their tablets are phenomenal. Although I'm totally angry that they changed the meaning of the word tablet because that used to mean a laptop without a keyboard. And now it means like an eviscerated piece of cell phone hardware bloated to the size of a laptop.
Yeah.
But I can be done being angry about that because that happened 12 years ago.
Well, they're the one company that gets to tell the consumer what they want, and they listen.
Thunderbolt, anyone?
Well, and you said you had objections to how they treat their customers. They treat their customers exactly how their customers deserve to be treated. Because if they didn't deserve to be treated that way, they would demand better, which they clearly don't.
True.
So,
I've heard enough stories about people with bad experiences in the Apple Store, who are still like, "Oh yeah, it must have been an off day," but like half of their interactions are bad. Statistically speaking, if you're in the Apple Store 6 times and 3 of them are a bad support experience, it's probably not just you, right?
Because there's some hipster behind the counter that's going to tell them that they're holding it wrong.
Right.
No, it's perfect. You're just doing it wrong.
At least they've stopped marketing it as the Genius Bar. I'm sorry. Do you need me to hold your pretension? Because, like, that's got to be a lot.
You better stretch first.
Right. You know where they don't use apples? In physics. Like, not doing heavy computation on Apple devices.
No. I won an iPad. I ended up giving it away. My wife putts with it for about 15 minutes. It was like, nah, this is stupid. It wants me to sign up for all this shit. It wants... Like, no. I just want to turn it on and, like, play with it a little. I don't want to, like, give it all my details and fucking enter credit card information. And God knows what else it asked for. It was ridiculous.
You can resist that.
Like, no, this is stupid.
I have an iPad that we've resisted entering all of the, like, there's some information that it has, but we've resisted entering most of it. And it's a yappy little dog. Like, hey, give me your credit card. Give me your credit card. Give me your credit card. Like, no. Because you have no controls over it. Like, oh, I'm going to give you my credit card and you're just going to bill me for storage.
Yeah.
But you gave me your credit card. You said it was okay. Like, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
You know what I can do on my Android tablet? I can put a payment method in and require authentication on it.
Yeah.
Easily.
Or not put a payment method in. Or not even sign into it.
Right. Right.
But yeah.
So Apple devices,
I think
not your friend.
I think I gave it to my ex-wife's daughter. Can't remember what I did with it. I think that's where it went. Just whatever. Wanted at a company event. It was one of the gambling casino nights.
Ah, good stuff.
Yeah. And I won a bunch of money. Can't remember if I was first or second, but yeah.
What an iPad.
So yeah, got an iPad out of it. It's like, okay, this isn't worth selling. I mean, I probably could have, but
Right,
yeah,
but
well,
all that
whatever.
effort.
It wasn't worth the effort for a couple $100. So, and yeah, now I remember it was my ex-wife's daughter that got it because she needed one for school or something. They wanted her to buy one. It's like,
Oh,
what? No, here, hold on. Oh, and then that was a big because my wife had like started setting it up. It was all like locked, and boy, if I remember right, it took like a week or two to get the thing unlocked because we had to like submit shit to Apple just to like get it unlocked so that we could use it again, so that somebody else could set it up.
that's
And she
that's
never
funny.
even like she never even got to the point where she could like futz around with it because she basically just noped out of it. Yeah, it was stupid because they wanted like the original email address that she had set up on it, and she never set one up. So it was like stupid. I mean, and we tried everything, all their like phone numbers and email addresses, and everything we gave it, it refused. So yeah, I know it was stupidity, all for a stupid little device. It wasn't even like a iPad Pro, like William got. It was just like I don't know, whatever the little thing is. I don't know. I don't know, but it looked pretty. I'd never pay for one with my money, but yeah, is what it is. As far as any kind of laptop or desktop, once again, I mean, there's people that love Mac OS, and yeah, it's pretty ish. But every time I've tried to use it, everything seems so backwards on it. Maybe if that's all you've ever used, maybe it makes sense. You know, the Apple ways of doing everything. But I don't get, I don't know, whatever. Maybe I'm just dumb. Oh, I skipped one of yours, William, from a ways back. Oh, Scorch. I've never heard of Scorch. You know what Scorch is?
I don't, but I'm gonna find out.
Yeah. I
Um,
assume it's on automated automation related because that's what we were talking about at the time.
right.
Oh, System Center Orchestrator. Oh, that makes sense. Scorch, System Center Orchestrator. Gotcha.
Ah, yes, I like it. Um, so Ansible Tower. You have been doing work on that. I'm curious to hear how that's going. Like um that's been big. Ansible has a heavy footprint in the industry.
Yeah.
Um, Now I'm looking at System Center Orchestrator.
Now it's my turn
Run
to be right
books.
back.
Yep, I gotcha. I'm gonna rant about Apple for a while. So, um, we use Apple devices in theater for hand scanners or for ticket scanners, and they're they're horrible. My least favorite thing about an iOS device, and I have a lot of things that I'm not a fan of. Um, if they lose power, which if you've got a ticket scanner that you throw in a drawer for 6 months, they're going to drain their battery. Um, and then when they come up, you have to set the date. And maybe I'm doing it wrong, but the scroll wheel to set the date to the appropriate year, month, and day, that scroll wheel doesn't move real fast. You can get it to move real fast, but then it like goes completely out of whack. So, sitting there going scroll, 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 scroll for like 5 minutes and hoping that you don't accidentally engage it to scroll too fast and like suddenly blast forward from, 2001 to like 2052. Awful user experience. Like, just let me, like, fine, use the scroll wheel thing if you want, but let me tap and type it in. Just let me type the date in, please. I'm ranting against Apple devices again.
Yeah, I did a little bit of that while you were gone.
I figured I had to get my turn. So yeah, I'm gonna have to check this out. Not that I really want to be working with System Center, like many products of that ilk from Microsoft. It seems to be overly complicated. But they do make a sometimes cohesive product.
They can when they want to.
Yeah. So let's talk about Google and their increased warnings on scamming and phishing.
Yeah, because there's been a rash of phishing via, well, theft of information via Sheets and was it Sheets and Docs? But yeah, effectively the modern analog of the old macro kind of virus. But I first heard it from like crypto communities, where it was like, yeah, don't open any untrusted docs that somebody sends you, because that doc, if you give it permissions accidentally or don't read close enough, I mean, anything you happen to have up on Google Drive, it may or may not have access to, as well as local data or other Sheets data. So got to be careful.
So I'm normally a fan of the way that Google handles security. I think that their approach is good. They have a bunch of stuff on the back end that tries to protect their users from inappropriate usage. But this is one of the situations where, like, yes, I gave you permission to access Drive, right?
Yeah.
Maybe a little more granular permission control would be a nice feature, right? Like,
Yeah, I would tend to agree, because the scripting that's built into all the Google suite, it you can do a lot with it. Once you authorize it,
right.
It can wreak havoc, and I'm pretty sure that that's the avenue that they're taking. It's just
Right.
embedded scripts that are able to exfiltrate all your data.
It's not that Google doesn't have the capability to do more granular permissions. Like, if you play it all in Google Cloud, they'll let you carve up permissions really finely grained.
Yeah. But can you imagine an end user dealing with even 2% of that?
I can. But you know what? I don't
mean,
want them to deal with 2% of it. I want 1%. I want Google to say, hey, here's all your protected data. Here's your protected data place. And you have to give very explicit permissions. You have to know what you're doing to give permissions to this, other than you through Chrome, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the other place
just authorize the script to be able to run.
to do whatever.
It should be, hey, you just download this brand new, well, not download, but you just access this brand new doc that somebody sent you, and you authorize the script, and this script is trying to do this. Are you sure you want it to do this?
Right.
This
Like,
is
hey,
the data it will have access to. All
or
of your
like
shit.
maybe put a layer in where like, I mean, get straight up UAC on it, right? Like this script is trying to access this file. Are you sure?
Yeah.
No, I don't want them looking at my crypto keys, right? Like,
Well, yeah. I mean, and that's one of those things you should never be throwing up on Google Docs, or well, Google Drive to begin with. But for those dumb enough to do it,
yep.
because it could be any kind of sensitive information.
Mm-hmm. Where are you going to store your keys? Right? Like your magic passphrase. Nobody's got a printer anymore.
Hardware security module. Well,
Like
yeah, I got those too.
they make versions of, I mean, yeah, this is just a
Yeah.
FIDO key, but they make a combined FIDO key
And HSM that
HSM.
can hold a couple of keys. Yeah.
Right. Like
The
that's good enough. Because you can define basically any crypto platform I've seen lets you define your keys if you want.
generally not a good idea. You're better off with derived, but yes.
Yeah.
Because
But like
that's what the ledger does. Basically, you have a you have your you have your basically the words that define your wallet, and then all the keys are derived from one set of
right.
words.
Right.
So
It's
yeah,
your
it's
magic salt.
24 plus 1 words out of 2048 different words.
Yep. Salt is
It's
probably not the right
secure
word
enough.
for that, but
No,
it's
yeah.
secure enough.
Yes. Well, and the nice thing about that is for any different crypto, you can generate keys that are relevant to that type of crypto, whatever key lengths you need, whatever that particular one needs, you can derive them from that initial seed phrase. So that seed phrase is basically your keys to the kingdom, but you don't have to remember or keep track of or store every single private key.
Right.
You could just derive as many as you need,
Right.
all from that.
And you can always, if you've got your like 6 or whatever words that you've defined, you can come back and unlock everything if you need to.
24, but yes.
20.
Yes, that's the important part. Well, I think you can do as little as 12, but
By
24
the way,
is the current standard.
what are you drinking tonight, Brian?
I have got Ardbeg 10.
Excellent.
Finally restocked the scotch, so I've
Yay.
been running low for forever and hadn't made a run to discount liquor. So, how
Yeah.
about yourself? I saw you
I
cracked a beer.
I'm on my second Lakefront Brewery beer for the evening.
Hello. There we go. I can almost read that.
Yeah. Pretty washed out. Probably gonna need to get a better camera.
Yeah.
Bumble Bear and Beerzite, and Lakefront and Ardbeg are not sponsors, though they should be. Just saying.
Hey.
You don't even have to give us money.
Hey, what was the trying to remember what the name of the company was. Noble. The whiskey company
Okay.
that Mike Rowe
Yeah.
involved with. The Nobleman. That's it.
Or should we start saying the nobleman in every social media post and episode? Just
Maybe.
to, I have not looked this up. I'm curious now.
Oh, and well, I sent the video earlier
Oh,
today.
yep. I
Yeah.
I'm I'm lackadaisical and have not
Yeah. So
had a
so he
chance.
did a shanty for the nobleman.
All right, all right.
It was pretty good. I mean, he's got a good voice. So,
He does. I mean,
but hey, Mike Rowe, if you're watching, we're really cheap to buy out.
yes, we
We
are.
almost have double-digit viewers. Send us some
Hey,
booze, and we will totally drink it
m-
on air.
you know, Mike Rowe is a champion of the working class individuals.
Yes.
And while IT professionals are frequently thought of as white collar, um, a shockingly high number of us do not have degrees, or at best, like tech school
Oh yeah.
credentials. Right? Like we are
Shit.
the last trade guild. Um, trade guild. What does a trade guild look like? It's on a fish. It swims in the
Yeah.
um,
Does one side, then trades to the other side.
right, right. Um, no, but like we're trained like blue collar workers. You don't learn crap in school. You learn it on the job from people that have more experience than you.
Yeah.
Um, and honestly, the industry moves too fast for it to be anything else. So Mike Rowe should come on, and we should talk to him about, like, you know, the IT industry is like a place for the blue collar worker to go and make a decent living. So Mike Rowe, if you're watching,
Yeah. Sure, he totally is. So Mike, Mike Galici, not Rowe. Is that your Barbara or that from the store? Yeah, that was when I sent that video over. I was like, oh man, if we could only. Yes. Well, that was a.
thanks,
Yours
Mike.
are from the store. This
This
year.
year.
Okay.
So I think that means yes, it's his.
Yes, it says. Good.
But the jury is still out. Like every one of those answers is technically ambiguous.
Yes. But we get what you're saying. Yeah, make some solid wine.
We should have a live event and
Mm.
have Mike serve his wine.
Live from Mike's basement.
What could go wrong?
Yeah. He does have an insane basement. It's
He does. I've seen pictures.
yeah.
That sounds like a ton of fun.
Yeah, he can host a full band. Recording, lights,
We could have a
everything.
live band.
Yeah.
Oh,
He
speaking of,
probably knows many of them.
I know a guy that could write us a theme song.
Oh.
We could have a theme song. It could be
We
fun.
could have a theme song.
I don't know what we would say in a theme song. It would have to be something like rambling, frequently off topic, and probably not as entertaining as you had hoped.
No, probably not.
All right. Other things that came up this week. Intel
Oh.
CEO saying the chip shortage gonna probably last into 2024. I have a hard time with this one. Because like how long has the chip shortage been going on? How long has Intel been like wringing their hands about how, like, well, we're at the mercy of our Chinese product? Like you could have built several factories by now.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, they have several fabs in the United States
Sure,
and Western Europe.
they could have more by now.
Well, it takes a long time to turn up a fab and
It
billions of
does.
dollars. I get it, but it's
It
also
sure
been a
does.
couple of years.
Uh-huh. Like the
What are they waiting
the
on?
right, the argument
I'll,
that
I'll go
like it
wherever it
takes
is and
time,
fill my pockets and bring it to you.
the argument that, well, it takes a long time to spin up a fab. Um, yes, it does. But that time has passed. And what it tells me is you chose to roll the dice. You could have gone to like 6 or 7 governments and gotten money to build them, because having the US government, the British government, all of the EU understand that, hey, if chip production slows down, eventually the economy slows down. We are an electronics economy.
Yeah.
And
Well,
if
and
you
I
start
don't
to,
think it's necessarily the fabs where the choke point is. It's got to be raw materials because it's not like they have less fabs than they did 2 years ago.
um,
Granted, I mean, this doesn't necessarily affect Intel, but it affects damn near everyone else. I mean, there is a shift in allocation of time for, I mean, things like GPUs. They're buying every wafer they can. Well, not doesn't quite work like that, but they're they're buying all the fab time they can
right,
anywhere they can through like what TSMC. Who's the other? There's another like fab for hire company.
every
But
bit of Chinesium
anyways, yeah,
wafer that they can get, they're getting.
yes,
Um, and that is like, it's a state-sized capitalist company. They'll sell you whatever you're willing to buy if you're willing to pay for it.
yeah.
Um, I just, at this point, if you're still, I'm going to juxtapose this against Amazon, who has rough earnings, largely because of costs they've incurred. Um, they now have more warehouse space than they know what to do with, because they said, oh, we looked at the numbers. We realized we need more warehouse space to meet demand.
Yeah.
Demand didn't keep up with the expectations. Not surprising with like the all the pandemic stuff kind of relaxing. Um, you know what Amazon said? Meh, we'll catch up soon. We'll
Yeah.
just
They
slow
can
our
absorb
roll.
it.
Right. Um,
Well, and they've gone from, I mean, they still have giant warehouses in like metro areas, but they've
mhm,
started standing up significantly smaller warehouses in more remote areas, kind of
mhm.
like a second tier, which, yeah, that's going to work out well for them in the long run. And they can
Right.
survive. I mean, they went how long without
They've got
making
the
a single
money.
penny? Yeah, they've got the
Yeah.
money. They
Um,
just need to fend off the shareholders for a little while and say, "Hey, we're fine."
here's the thing. Like, who is Intel fending off?
No one.
Right. Like, it's not
I mean,
TI. It's not AMD. Right? Like, yeah, those are competitors in certain markets. Um, but they're suffering through the same things. Honestly, if they wanted to do, like, they wanted to offset the cost, they probably could have gone to TI and AMD and said, "Hey, you want to go halvesies on a
in a fab.
production facility?
Well, because
You want to
like
buy a
so,
mine?" You know,
I mean, their only real competitor is AMD, and they have bigger problems because they don't have their own fabs. They have they make everything through TSMC, so
right,
their problems are even worse than Intel's.
right. And at this point, Intel, looking out into the future, should have said, "You know what? We have people that are willing to buy up the silicone and the production time, um, and like whatever raw material that they need at a premium rate, but they like those companies at the end of the day don't have the industry backing and the deep pockets that Intel does, because Intel can go to the bank and be like, give me money. And the bank's like, here's some money.
Yeah.
Like Intel could have bought stuff on futures. They could have bought raw material 10 years down the road, but they didn't.
Yeah.
So like now you're coming to me and you're wringing hands like, oh, the chip shortage. Like, you know what you're telling me? You're telling me that you're adding a percentage margin to every chip. And now that the market has, like, market dynamics are what they are, and you're charging more for chips because they're more rare, you're making more money on them. Because otherwise, you'd be crying about it to the government. Relief, relief, relief. If you're not doing that and you're just like, oh, the shortage is going to last a while.
Well, and that's assuming that they are pulling up that slack and not just getting eaten up in distribution for the pricing differences.
I
It's
don't know.
probably a combination. They
It is.
probably
Like,
increased their prices to distribution, but I bet you a lot of that's getting sucked up.
a lot of it, but not all of it.
Yeah, well, yeah.
The
If they're smart, not all of it.
Intel increasingly smells to me like the oil and gas industry. Right? Like, why did gas prices go up, what, 25, 30, 40%? When there's a conflict in a region that has nothing to do with US gas, like
Well,
US octane.
I mean, oil is weird because it's probably our most perfect. Well, behind metals, it's probably our most fungible commodity.
Sure. But
Any
here's the
change
other thing.
anywhere affects everywhere
Right.
because it is it's one of the most truly global markets.
Sure. Here's the other thing that I
But
will say about the oil and gas industry. Every time there's the suggestion of a problem,
prices go
the
up.
the prices go up. Like, and it's not because like suddenly consumer demand is that much greater. At the end of the day, people buy about the same amount of gas, right? So like the prices are increasing because like, oh, people are afraid of who? Who is buying more gas because not at a volume to increase the price that much? No,
No, yeah, because
that
what are
is
you
the
gonna do
oil and
with it?
gas. Right. It's the oil and gas industry going, well, there's the perception of trouble, so we can get away with raising prices.
Well, and that game has always been played, and it's always been the joke. Oh well, refinery capacity is low, so we have to raise prices. Well, now we built some new refineries, so now we have high refinery capacity, so we have to raise prices to cover that.
Right.
But
Every
the thing
time
is,
there's like a
what they
conflict.
actually make on it is tiny compared to the taxes on it. That's the other thing you
Sure.
have to take into
Right. No,
consideration.
like I understand why this goes on because
Yeah.
like it's lining the pockets of the regulator as well as the regulated, right?
Yes.
But
In fact,
every
more
time,
the regular than the regulated, which is a fucking weird situation.
yeah, yep. Um, but anytime you're talking about like some kind of weird crisis and the oil and gas industry is whining about like, oh, the prices went up because of this, like somehow they come home with record profits. Like, really? I I don't want to private I don't want to take private industry and turn it into um like I don't want to make it a public
No, you don't want
institution,
to
right?
nationalize it because then you end up with
I don't want to national,
Venezuela.
but you know what
They
I want?
nationalized their industry and it fell apart. The
I want
oil
to
industry.
co-op it. I want a bunch of US citizens and like Quick Trip to decide that, you know what? And you know what? Costco or Walmart or whatever, like a couple of big heavy hitters that know how to distribute pretty well and a ton of US customers just be like, you know what? We're buying our own. We're going to own our own oil fields. We're going to own our own refinery. Go F yourselves. We would
Problem
get
is that would be a 20-year project just to start. To deliver the first gallon of gas would be a
hold on.
20-year project.
Where's my wallet?
Well,
You telling me that because you know what would happen in
no,
20
you
years?
can't. It's been because of regulations.
I mean, yeah, but like, you know what would happen in 20 years? Every one of us that sign on, it'd have gas for like $1.50 a gallon. Because that's what it really costs 20 years from now.
Yeah.
And also, when you get enough consumers behind it, like, here's the beauty of a co-op. Every consumer involved has a real stake in it. It's not like, oh, big company, oh, sad sack, can't get your pipeline to run. Oh, guess you shouldn't go on. Like, no, like when you get like a couple of million Americans behind a thing, things move. It's not a 20-year prospect at that point. It's like a 3-year prospect. You're going to buy a refinery. You're going to buy a company. You're like, oh, Shell, you got extra capacity. We're just going to buy it from you. Yeah, we're going to pay a little extra. It's fine. We're going to get you on the taxes later. Don't worry. Seriously. Oil and gas co-op. It's the way to go. I
It
actually
would be
know some
better.
people that own some rigs in Kansas. Yeah, let's do it.
Don't think too hard on it.
I
It would be a better direction for your energies.
batteries.
Close. Reactors that are small enough to fit in a car or under your house.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're talking
'Cause
about
we
like
could totally do that. We've had the technology since the 50s.
right, non-fission, like just decay reactors are efficient and safe. Like, hey, just don't mess with the shielding. Like, don't be a Russian.
Well, and that's the thing. You could make it self-contained
Mm-hmm.
with a 15, 20-year lifespan, easy.
50,
And make it
60 years. Easy.
well, but see, that's overkill. Even if you had
I mean,
one
we're
that
in the
you could like
US.
remove from one vehicle and move to a new vehicle, after 15 years, that's a long time.
You could probably make one that weighs less than 50 pounds.
Oh, guarantee it.
I mean,
Well, I'm not going to guarantee it because shielding.
no, you
I'm
can make
thinking
it.
about 50 pounds might be a stretch, but the 200 or 300 pounds that an internal combustion engine,
If
you
you
know,
want one, here's the thing. If you want one that only has to last 15 to 20 years, you can get it for 50 pounds. And that means that you and a friend can move it from one vehicle to the next.
yeah,
Or you and a hand cart can move it.
yeah,
You might have 3 cars and only need 2 of them.
yeah.
I
Like,
only
oh,
drive 1 car at a time.
need to use the truck. Gonna have to move the power plant over.
Might be easier than plugging in an electric vehicle.
And I can't imagine something like that costing more than 5 or 10 grand. There's not that much there. And this is like on the outside.
I
How
mean,
could it possibly cost more than 10 grand?
you're forgetting the cost of regulation.
Well,
But you know what? 20 grand for a power plant for 15 years. How much are you going to spend on gas in
but
15
way
years?
more than that. Yeah.
Now, for the viewership that may be wondering what this has to do with IT operations, the answer is I don't know. I don't know.
But it may be
Power.
powering your data center someday. So
Right. I mean, let's get cold fusion running.
UPS, why?
Right? Why build a battery when you can just have power?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm out of topics. You got
Yeah.
anything else?
At the moment, no. We can wrap it up.
I mean, I feel a little bad. We haven't made it
Yeah.
to the 2-hour mark,
No.
but
You stop when you stop. Stop when it
yeah.
makes sense.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming.
Yeah.
We
Thank you very much,
appreciate our
everyone.
loyal viewers.
Viewer. Sometimes it's plural, sometimes it's not. That's okay. We do this for our own amusement, not necessarily yours. If somebody else can benefit as well, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
But as long as you keep watching Mike Rowe and send us some of your booze, or hell,
We'll
Mike Galici and send us some of your wine. You want to be our sponsor?
Mike
Yeah,
Galici
Mike's still
sponsor.
on. So he's the one. That's the thing. I think that number is actually a lie.
Yeah. I mean,
So
we're not to 10 o'clock. I'm guessing William is still alive and on.
yeah. So
Well, if you're out there,
I think the current viewer count is actually a little skewed, just because it doesn't correlate to what prior videos were.
yep.
So.
Well, regardless, we thank you.
Oh yeah. So yeah, Jesse's watching as well. Yeah. See, Mike, I only see one on our counter. So yeah, I think the numbers are a little fuzzy. Put it that way. Let me see what the.
What do I got here?
Checking the control room. Oh yeah, see the control room. Oh, see now I'm seeing 2. It just switched to 2. And yeah, we only hit 5. But we have 7 views. So it doesn't really
You know what? Whatever. If it was just the two of us, we'd probably still do this. So
yeah, I don't really care. Yeah, this is shooting the shit on video and
hoping you get something out of it.
yep, definitely.
All right.
So hopefully next week we will have somebody on from ops at a major US crypto exchange. So
I
we'll
have
see.
so many
Trying to arrange
questions.
that. That should be interesting.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All
So
right.
that's all you're getting for now. Tune in next week to find out. Well, and I don't know. Are we going to do Sunday or are we going to do Monday? What are we doing? I don't know.
I mean, let's see what crypto guy wants to do, right?
All right. Works
Or
for me.
crypto gal. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
However they identify. I'm not going to judge.
So tune in next week
All right.
for crypto they.
Yeah, crypto they. Them. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week, or maybe late this week. Probably not late this week, unless we do some of our little short form live streams or short form video. I don't know. I'd like to start doing that, just because.
Yep.
I don't know. I'd like to start doing that. So
If you want to see it, or even if you don't, mash that bell.
yeah, do the thing that he said. Like, subscribe, hit the notify doobly doo.
Yeah.
The bell, right? Yeah, whatever.
Yep. Yep.
All right. Yep. Have a good
Good
week.
night.